I am with Firearmers Against Crime. And usually when I'm asked to come and speak at these events, it's all Second Amendment issues for me. It's the Second Amendment rally. It's what's happening with legislation, things of that nature. This is a little bit different because what we're actually here to celebrate is the 250th anniversary of our nation. And I don't think enough people put enough weight in what that exactly means. It's an honor to stand before you as we celebrate an extraordinary milestone. 250 years, and I want you to think about that for a moment. 2.5 centuries ago, a small group of men gathered in Philadelphia and did something that had never truly been done before. They did not merely declare independence from a king, they declared something far more revolutionary. And it's that our rights do not come from government. They come from our Creator. Government exists only to secure those rights, not to grant them. And that simple truth has changed the world forever. For 250 years, America has endured wars, economic hardships, political turmoil, social changes, and countless predictions of our demise. And yet through every challenge, one thing has remained remarkably constant, and that's us, the American people. Generation after generation has answered the call to preserve liberty, where farmers became soldiers, immigrants became citizens, workers became entrepreneurs, and ordinary men and women became extraordinary because freedom gave them the opportunity to pursue their dreams. Today we celebrate all of them. We celebrate those who crossed frozen rivers with George Washington. We celebrate those who preserved the Union, who stormed the beaches of Normandy, who spent their days in Korea and Vietnam, who stood watch during the Cold War, and who have served since September 11th. And the millions who simply lived honorable lives, raised families, built businesses, taught children, worked the land, volunteered in their communities, and quietly made America stronger each and every single day. They all contributed to this remarkable experiment in self-government. But today is not simply about looking backwards. Today it is also important that we look forward. America is not 250 years old and winding down. America is 250 years old and just getting started. The greatest chapters of our history do not have to be behind us. They can be ahead of us, but that depends on what we choose. Every generation inherits America in trust. Our founders did not leave us a finished nation. They left us a constitutional republic that requires constant stewardship. Benjamin Franklin famously responded when asked what kind of government had created a republic if you can keep it. Well, it is up to us to keep it. Those words are just as relevant today as they were in 1787. Keeping our republic requires citizens, not spectators. It requires courage, not complacency, and participation, not apathy. Perhaps more than anything else, it requires remembering what makes this country unique. America was never founded on the idea that government knows best. America was founded on the belief that free people know best. Government is at its best when it protects liberty, administers justice under the law, and leaves people free to build their own lives. The more decisions families can make for themselves, the stronger families become. The more communities that solve their problems locally, the stronger those communities become. The more individuals are free to innovate, create, worship, speak, and defend themselves, the stronger America becomes. History repeatedly teaches us that liberty creates prosperity, liberty creates innovation, liberty creates opportunity. Centralized power, no matter how well intended, tends to grow. And when government grows beyond its proper role, individual freedom necessarily shrinks. It is a principle as old as the Republic itself. The Constitution was written precisely because the founders understood that concentrated power is something free people must always approach with caution. Checks and balances, federalism, an independent judiciary, separation of powers, the Bill of Rights. Each was designed to preserve liberty by limiting government. The Bill of Rights was not given to us as a people. The Bill of Rights was given to government to tell them to keep their hands off of it. And that is something that we have failed to teach the youth these days. They believe government guarantees our freedom when in fact it is our freedom that should be limiting government. Each was designed to preserve liberty. That architecture has served America remarkably well for 250 years. Among those protections is one that has long inspired debate and deep conviction, and what I normally stand before you to speak of in the Second Amendment. Among the first acts of our new nation after ratifying the Constitution was the adoption of the Bill of Rights. The founders understood that creating a government was only half of the task. The other half was placing clear limits on its authority. Those first 10 amendments were not afterthoughts. They were promises. promises that certain liberties would remain beyond the reach of ordinary political change. They reflected the belief that rights belong to the people and the government exists to secure those rights, not to create them. The Second Amendment was part of that original promise. To understand why it was included, we have to understand the world the founders knew. They lived under a government they believed had become unresponsive to the rights of the citizen. They'd experienced the hardships of war, debated the dangers of centralized power, and sought to create a constitutional system in which authority would be divided, checked, and ultimately accountable to you, the people. The language they chose has been studied, debated, and interpreted for more than 2 centuries. Like many constitutional provisions, its meaning has been examined through scholarship, legislation, and judicial decision as new questions have arisen. In recent decades, we've seen the Second Amendment in several landmark cases. The District of Columbia versus Dick Heller in 2008. The court held the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess firearms for lawful purposes such as self-defense. McDonald versus the City of Chicago 2 years later. The court held that protection applies to state and local governments as well. More recently, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. The court concluded modern firearm regulations must be evaluated in the light of the nation's historical traditions of firearms regulation. These decisions are part of American constitutional law. They've also generated continuous discussion about the scope of the right and the types of regulations that are consistent with the Constitution. Those conversations continue today in legislatures, courts, and communities across the country. Ask your state representative how often he has to weigh in on a constitutional right on the floor of the House, and they will tell you every single day. Whether one is discussing the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Second Amendment, the larger principle remains the same. Constitutional rights are designed to ensure, beyond the passions and disagreements of any single moment in history, they are guaranteed to us for the existence of this nation. That is one of the remarkable features of a constitutional system. It provides mechanisms for change while also establishing an enduring protection that cannot be altered casually. Americans have always debated what liberty requires, and those debates themselves are evident of a vibrant constitutional republic. As we celebrate 250 years of American independence, we should also celebrate 250 years of self-governance, a tradition in which citizens, elected representatives, and courts all play distinct roles in interpreting, preserving, and applying the principles that have guided this nation since its founding. The Constitution is not merely a historical document displayed behind glass. It's a living framework for government that continues to shape our national lives every day. Its continued vitality depends on only judges and lawmakers, but on citizens who understand it, study it, and appreciate the freedoms it protects and the responsibility that comes with those freedoms. That's one of the greatest legacies we can ever hope to pass on to future generations. Not simply a nation that's prosperous or powerful, but one whose people understand the Constitution, cherish the liberties provided by it, and remain committed to preserving the institutions that have sustained our republic for 2.5 centuries. Regardless of where people fall on specific policy questions, debates about constitutional rights deserve to be approached carefully, respectfully, and within the constitutional process. The enduring strength of our republic depends on preserving both our liberties and the rule of law. The broader lesson is simple. A constitutional right matters precisely because it's intended to place certain freedoms beyond the reach of any shifting political majority. Our challenge at 250 years is to remain vigilant in protecting that system that allows free people to govern themselves. Our Constitution was not meant to be convenient. It was meant to preserve freedom. It is not meant to be easy. It demands responsibility. It requires an informed citizenry, and it requires civic virtue. It requires people willing to stand up not only for their own rights, but for the rights of others. That's the genius of America. Our freedoms reinforce one another. The freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, due process, equal protections, the right to be secure in our own homes. Each right strengthens the others. Together they form a constitutional framework that has helped sustain American democracy for generations. As we celebrate 250 years, we have to remember that democracy is not self-executing. It depends on public trust, peaceful civic participation, integrity in election outcomes, adherence to the Constitution, and the protection of fundamental rights. It depends on citizens who remain engaged. It depends on you remaining engaged. It is gradual. The threat to liberty is not dramatic. It is gradual. It arrives one regulation at a time, one expansion of authority at a time, one assumption that government should solve every problem at a time. Every generation must decide where the proper balance lies between government power and individual freedom. Reasonable people will disagree about policies. That's part of democracy. But throughout our history, many Americans across the political spectrum have argued that preserving space for families, communities, businesses, charities, and local institutions to solve problems is an essential part of maintaining a free society. A free people do not ask their government to do everything. They ask government to protect the conditions that allow the free people to flourish. That is why civic engagement matters. That's why voting matters. This year, our civil rights are on the ballot in Pennsylvania. A 2-seat shift in the Pennsylvania Senate will guarantee civil rights come under fire more than anything this Commonwealth has seen in generations. We need every supporter of the Constitution to get not only themselves to the polls, but other like-minded people to register and vote to secure the very rights that our founding fathers did their best to make inviolate. Again, civic engagement matters. Serving on school boards, volunteering in local organizations, helping your neighbors, participating in community life, they all matter. Liberty is sustained not only in Washington or Harrisburg. It's sustained in your neighborhood, churches, businesses, your homes, in conversations like this one. The next 250 years will bring challenges our founders could never have imagined. We're talking about artificial intelligence, space exploration, biotechnology, cybersecurity, global competition. These are things the founding fathers could not foresee, but they are principles that carried us through the first 250 years will remain timeless in addressing those very same issues. Limited government, personal responsibility, the rule of law, equal justice, individual liberty and opportunity, and faith in a remarkable capacity of free people. America has never been perfect. Perfection was not the promise. The promise was freedom. The promise was that each generation could build something better than what it inherited. The promise still lives. So today, do not simply celebrate history. Strive to make history. Teach your children why liberty matters. Defend the constitutional institutions. Participate in your community. Disagree with each other respectfully, and leave a nation stronger than we found it. When future generations gather to celebrate America's 300th birthday, I hope they look back at us with gratitude. May they say the Americans of 2026 understood what they inherited. The Americans of 2026 protected constitutional liberty. The Americans of 2026 remained faithful to democratic self-government, that we valued freedom enough to accept the responsibilities that come with it, and that we refuse to believe the greatest days are behind us, but instead in front of us. At 250 years old, America is not growing old. America is growing stronger, wiser. It's still leading. America is still becoming, and the next chapter is waiting to be written. The question is not whether America's story continues, because it will. The question is whether we have the courage, wisdom, and dedication to write a chapter worthy of the first 250 years. I believe we will, because I believe in the American people. I believe in you. Happy 250th birthday, America. May God continue to bless this nation and guide us through as we begin the next 250 years of liberty. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Can everybody hear me?